New Year's Eve. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ryan Smith in for Mike Greenberg. We got a big show for you today, a lot to get to, especially in the NFL, and that's why we've got our NFL team in the house today. We got Neek. Louis Riddick is going to join us as well. Adam Schefter is there. Mark Sanchez, David Pollack, Desmond Howard joining us on college football. So much to talk about, and with our guys standing by, we get right to the NFL and the AFC. Because here's the deal. It's winning you're in the AFC. And let's start with the Titans. 10-5, they clinched the AFC South with a win versus the Texans or a Colts loss. Now, independent of that result, by the way, the Dolphins clinch a playoff berth with a win in Buffalo. They can also clinch with a loss by any one of these three teams, the Colts, the Browns, or the Ravens. Baltimore is another 10-5 team, scrapping for the postseason. They've been strong so far in the last 4 weeks at least, but with a win in Cincinnati, they're in, or they need losses by Cleveland or Indianapolis. And the Browns are looking to make the playoffs for the first time since 2002. They need to win against Pittsburgh or a Colts loss or a combination of Baltimore, Indianapolis, and Miami winning as well as a Titans loss. A lot to sort out there. And look at the Cleveland Browns, their odds right there to reach the wild card. They're at 58%. To win the division, it's 16%. And to go all the way to the conference championship, that's 3%. That's according to our FPI. So, we start off with Adam Schefter talking about the Cleveland Browns. Now, Adam, Cleveland reopened their facility for practice on Wednesday afternoon after closing it earlier in the day to conduct contact tracing. What's the latest there?
Ryan, problematic. It reopened yesterday afternoon, as you mentioned, and now they will go and see if it spread. But I think the tests last night would be key to see if there's further spread. Now, we go back to this past weekend. The Browns' entire wide receiver unit was essentially wiped out, and they headed to New York for a big game against the Jets where they didn't have their wide receivers that they needed. Jarvis Landry, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Rashard Higgins, Carter L. Hodge. So they were missing some key players. Now, yesterday, there were more positive tests that turned up. And so they're hoping that the virus has been contained, but they should get further clarity as the week goes on. And wouldn't that be something to go through an entire NFL season without a single cancellation, only to have its playoff schedule on the final weekend of the season be disrupted somehow with the events in Cleveland? The Browns are hoping that's not the case. The NFL is hoping that's not the case. But I can tell you that everybody is closely monitoring the events in Cleveland as they're unfolding now.
And Adam, with last week and now what's happening now, I have to think the concern level's pretty high there.
Oh, there's no question, Ryan. Listen, the NFL's come really far. And the last thing the league and the Browns want, especially when the Browns are on the cusp of their first playoff appearance in almost 2 decades, is to have something spoil it at the end. And again, they're trying to see if this is contained. We should have further answers the rest of this week.
All right, Louis, I want to turn to you. Louis Neek joining us now. All right, so Big Ben out on Sunday. What are your thoughts on this being a must-win for Baker and the Browns?
Oh, look, this is games that they have had in years because their playoff life hangs in the balance and they can control their own destiny with a win here. And when you look at it without Ben Roethlisberger playing in this football game, the last thing that this team wants to do, provided that they are able to have their full complement or something close to their full complement of wide receivers, is to lose a game with a lot on the line. This is exactly what people are looking for from the Browns, for them to win the big games when it matters the most, when there's a lot at stake. The last time I saw them in person, obviously, was that game against the Baltimore Ravens on Monday Night Football, and they came up just short. But people thought, and I thought, that they had turned the corner at that point, that they understood that now it really has shifted from hope to expectations. People expect this football team to be good. So if Jarvis Landry is able to play, Kadero Hodge is able to play, Rashard Higgins is able to play, Donovan Peoples-Jones is able to play, Jedrick Wills are starting. He's practicing. Wyatt Teller, one of their best offensive linemen, he's practicing. If they're at full strength, I expect them to win this football game and would be very disappointed. I think a lot of people would be let down if they don't, considering everything that's on the line.
Yeah, and you talk about going from hope to expectations. That's all shifted in a matter of weeks, if not just this season. So, Neek, let's say they're at full strength. What do they need to do in order to win this game?
Well, I mean, I think it's obvious. There's no secret that the Cleveland Browns offense is predicated on how well they run the ball. So they need to get back to doing that. It's not a very modern way to think about football, but a lot of the best offenses, especially when you have a quarterback like Baker Mayfield, who is very, very good when things are going well and not so good when when there's too much pressure on him. I think it's important to establish that running attack, build the play action off of it, and let Baker get comfortable because you're probably going to need him in late stretches in the game. Even though the Steelers are not putting their best effort out there necessarily, not putting their best players out there, and probably aren't even game planning to the degree that they would if this was a must-win game like it is for the Browns, you're still going to get the Steelers. And the Steelers are still going to play hard. They still have a lot of great talent on offense and defense. So Baker's going to have to make some plays late in the game. You just don't want to ask him to make too many early in the game.
Adam, I see you chomping at the bit. Jump back in.
Well, what's interesting here is that as difficult a situation as this is for the Cleveland Browns, the Browns couldn't ask for any better timing on the schedule. The NFL basically gift-wrapped it to them for the holidays. Jets last week, and they couldn't capitalize. And the Pittsburgh Steelers at the absolute right time when the Steelers haven't gotten a bye this year due to the COVID crisis, and they had to basically go through their season without getting the bye they wanted, and will basically use this game as an unofficial bye to rest players like Ben Roethlisberger and some of their other players. And so if you're the Cleveland Browns and ever need to play the Pittsburgh Steelers and beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is the time and this is the week to do it. They're trying to make it easy for Cleveland.
That's a great point. I mean, this is their time. They didn't have that bye all that time. Now they've got the time to rest, and this is the time where Cleveland really has to try to pull it out. We will see what happens there. Guys, let's talk about the Bucs, because this was another thing that passed on yesterday. That was incredible. The Bucs clinched a playoff spot for the first time in 13 years. But if you ask their coach, Bruce Arians, that's not even nearly enough. Could it be Super Bowl or bust for Tom Brady and Tampa Bay? Take a listen to Bruce Arians. It's Super Bowl or bust. That's the goal every year. And you can't get to the Super Bowl if you can't get to in the playoffs. So that's been huge for us. It's Super Bowl or bust. That's the key part of that quote here. Bring back the guys. Lewis, what do you think? Is Arians right? Is it really Super Bowl or bust for the Bucs?
Yeah, I believe it is. Look, Tom Brady at this point in his career is not someone who you're looking at as a 3, 4, 5-year project type of situation where you have that amount of time in order to get a culture and the football team turned around and headed in the direction of Super Bowl contention. This was something that his acquisition, his signing down there, in addition to all the other acquisitions that they had to make as far as fortifying the offensive line with the drafting of Tristan Wirfs in the first round to play right tackle, the bringing in of Rob Gronkowski, the late season acquisition of Antonio Brown. These are all things that, combined with the fact that they had a young defense that was on the come in 2019, has had its ups and downs, but has a lot of big-time explosive playmakers on the defensive side, on that side of the ball. All that coming together equaled, look, they wanted to challenge for a division title, which they weren't able to win. Goes ahead and captures that. But this is still one of these situations where it is still about getting to the big game there in their home stadium. Otherwise, what was the point of Tom going down there? What was the point of them kind of building this roster in this way? Of course, they're looking to the future as well with some of the young players. But for 2020, it was about getting to the big game. And if they don't get there, there's no question this is a letdown for this organization and this football team.
Nick, what do you think?
I mean, I agreed with and disagreed with what Arians was saying, because obviously for the Pats, it's Super Bowl or bust for all the reasons that Lewis just laid out. But it's not true that for every season, for every team, for every season, that it's Super Bowl or bust. I think he was trying to soften it a bit there. We just came off a segment where we're talking about the Browns. This is an overwhelming success for the Browns, especially if they get into the playoffs. The Bucs situation is different. All those guys that came in, you have a 43-year-old quarterback. You are not putting all this together, and I promise you that Bruce Arians was not interested in bringing in AB unless somebody said, look, this is going to help us win the Super Bowl. I guarantee you that's the pitch that made Bruce Arians comfortable with bringing AB back into a team that he's on.
Schefter, weigh in.
Well, a couple things. I think Lewis touched on it. This is a chance to make